What did you do?
Nothing.
Did you hear those noises?
I did.
The audio playback of the cockpit voice recorder gave the investigators the first real clue as to the cause of the accident.
Loganair 670A loses 2 engines and crashes into the North Sea. Both pilots are dead.
Why would that trigger a dual engine failure?
It's never happened in the past.
Serious aircraft accidents rarely have one causal factor. It's a combination of circumstances.
Here's something. The crew called an engineer before departing.
All done.
Why did the crew need to investigate a problem?
Brace, brace, brace!
It's mid-afternoon on a chilly winter day at Edinburgh Airport in Scotland. Several aircraft are preparing for departure, including Loganair Flight 670A. At the time, Loganair, a Scottish carrier, was a franchisee of British Airways.
It operates about 40 different aircraft, and it does that in a variety of modes, whether it's passenger or cargo, to support a dispersed population.
Anti-collision beacon.
Anti-collision beacon on.
Running through pre-departure checks is 58-year-old Captain Carl Mason and 29-year-old First Officer Russell Dixon.
Start master and
Engine start sequence.
starting right engine.
The captain is hugely experienced. He had Royal Air Force training before he became a civilian pilot.
1, 2, 3.
First Officer Dixon passed his training with no failures or scrapes.
Ignition. Fuel lever forward. We have ignition. 500, 600, 700.
The pilots are at the controls of a Shorts 360, known as the Shed, and the Flying Shoebox for its unusual boxy shape.
The Shorts 360 is a short-haul commuter aeroplane which carries a total of 36 passengers and crew, or approximately 8,300 kilos of freight. It's a lovely airplane to fly.
Moments after starting the right engine, its generator stops.
Let's try that again.
You carry out a set procedure to try and get the generator back online. 9 times out of 10, that will solve the problem.
Starting sequence finished. Stabilizing at 73%. Oh, not again. Call maintenance. The Shed does this from time to time.
The Shorts 360 is powered by 2 Pratt & Whitney PT65 engines. They're a very reliable, robust engine. However, you could have a fault with the generator where it will not be connected to the aircraft AC electrical systems.
All done.
Terrific, thank you.
The engineer gives Loganair 670A the green light.
Loganair 670 Alpha cleared for Tower 5 Delta standard instrument departure.
Logan 670 Alpha, Tower 5 Delta, roger.
As the pilots taxi towards the runway,
Auto feather test.
they complete final pre-departure checks.
Feathering off.
Today, the plane is carrying more than 2,000 pounds of letters and boxes, destined for Belfast in Northern Ireland, on a scheduled 1-hour flight for Britain's Royal Mail.
Prop levers maximum.
Fuel levers flight.
Loganair 670A prepares for takeoff.
80 knots.
Roger.
V1. Rotate.
At 5:28 p.m., the crew lifts off from Edinburgh Airport.
Cycle landing gear.
It is prudent to cycle the undercarriage after takeoff in these conditions. The slush can collect in the covers that the undercarriage retracts into. As you climb, this can refreeze as the temperature drops.
Loganair 670A climbs as it approaches the North Sea.
Altitude.
1,150 feet.
Lots of whitecaps out there.
New one's quite something, isn't it?
The crew would have seen that the sea was rough. They knew that the wind was blowing very, very strongly because the aircraft was being buffeted about.
Altitude.
2,200 feet.
Not 2 minutes after takeoff, the crew takes preventative measures
Let's put the anti-icing on.
so precipitation doesn't form into ice in the engines and on the wings.
Anti-ice both on.
What did you do?
Nothing.
The captain realizes they're losing power in both of the engines.
We have a double engine failure.
Torque at 0 on both engines. Dual engine failure.
Fuel?
3,000 with plenty.
Without engine power and only 1,600 feet above the sea, the crew has little time to troubleshoot.
If you lose 2 engines, you are not going to be able to maintain altitude, so it is a very serious situation.
The captain initiates a right turn towards the coast, looking for a safe place to land.
Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Logan 670 Alpha.
We've had a double engine failure. Repeat, double engine failure.
Roger, Loganair 670 Alpha, roger your mayday. Turn left, heading 250. The airfield is 3 miles to the northeast.
Airspeed.
115 knots.
We can't relight the engines.
An engine in-flight relight checklist would take 3 to 4 minutes for an experienced crew at minimum. These pilots did not have time to do this.
1,300 feet. 110 knots.
Without power, they're rapidly losing altitude.
Altitude.
1,200.
With the airport still 3 miles away and no suitable place to land on the coast, Captain Mason has only one risky option.
Prepare to ditch.
If I was going to be on a flight where everything was going to go wrong, something like a dual engine failure, Captain Mason is the guy I'd like to have in charge. He has enormous experience in flying over the very hostile, freezing cold North Sea.
Airspeed is 110 knots.
I'll get us as close to shore as possible.
All they could do was to make the ditching as smooth and as slow as they possibly could without losing control of the airplane. They had that task to perform. If they performed it well, they hoped they would survive.
Airspeed is 100 knots.
Captain Mason prepares the aircraft as best he can.
The captain increases the pitch to reduce the speed. This will hopefully prevent the nose entering the water first and hence the aircraft flipping over.
Loganair 670 Alpha. We are ditching. Send recovery, over.
The radio call doesn't get through.
Loganair 670 Alpha, do you read me? Loganair 670 Alpha, over.
Pull up.
Airspeed.
Pull up.
Airspeed is 88. 87. 86.
Brace, brace, brace.
Loganair 670A crashes into icy waters only 65 meters from shore. Neither pilot is able to escape from the submerged plane. It isn't until daybreak that the tide retreats and investigators are able to get a close look at the wreckage.
The flight deck was badly crushed. The bulk of the rearmost fuselage and the tail units had broken away. The aircraft was in a nose-down attitude with the engines really stuck into the sand.
What could have caused both engines to fail just minutes after takeoff, resulting in the deaths of two experienced pilots? The UK's Air Accidents Investigation Branch, or AAIB, immediately begins its investigation into the crash of Loganair 670A.
Please send those to HQ.
Salvage teams are able to recover most of the wreckage.
We'll start with the engine.
The first message I got was that the aircraft had sent out a distress call stating that they'd had a double engine failure. Our interest was very much focused on the engines.
While the recovered flight data and cockpit voice recorders are prepared for download, investigators look for damage to the engines to explain why the plane crashed.
Not a single blade appears bent. There was no power on impact.
Neither engine was working when the plane hit the water.
If an aircraft struck the water with the engines running, the result would be bending of the compressor blades in the direction opposite to that of the airflow. We found no evidence of such bending.
Dual engine failure is unusual.
Maybe it's something mechanical? A problem or defect we can't see here?
We'll get the engines to the manufacturer.
We removed the engines from the airframe and shipped them to the manufacturer in Montreal, with a view to finding out whether there was any evidence of mechanical failure within the engines.
Takeoff speed is normal.
With the data from the flight recorder downloaded, the team scrutinizes the engine parameters for leads.
The climb is fine. 2 minutes in.
Look at that.
It looks like both engines flamed out at about the same time.
We have a double engine failure.
Talk at 0 on both engines.
A dual engine failure is often due to pilot confusion, not a mechanical issue.
It's a result usually of an engine failing for some reason or other, followed sometime later by a second engine shutting down as a result of actions taken but applied to the wrong engine.
In 1989, the pilots of British Midland Airways Flight 92 shut down the wrong engine after a fan blade broke 13 minutes after departing Heathrow Airport in London. The plane stalled and 47 people were killed.
There's no way the pilots accidentally shut down a second engine that quickly.
In this instance, the shutdown of the two engines occurred certainly within seconds of one another, which really didn't fit in with the scenario.
Could you start 80 seconds into the flight, just before the engines flame out?
The team now turns to the cockpit voice recorder for insight into the engine failure.
Altitude?
2,200 feet.
Let's put the anti-icing on.
Anti-ice both on.
What did you do?
Nothing.
We have a double engine failure.
Did you hear those noises?
I did. Wonder what they could be.
I'll play it again.
Let's put the anti-icing on.
Anti-ice both on.
What did you do?
As soon as the first officer turns the anti-icing switches on, there's humming noises. And 4 seconds later, both engines flame out.
The audio playback of the cockpit voice recorder gave the investigators the first real clue as to the cause of the accident.
What did you do? Nothing.
It was definitely linked to the 2 switch selections followed very shortly afterwards by the engines running down.
We have a double engine failure.
They talk at 0 on both engines.
Why would activating the anti-icing system somehow shut down both engines?
Doesn't make any sense.
AAIB investigators examined the anti-icing system of the Shorts 360 to determine if it played a role in the dual-engine failure of Loganair Flight 670A.
Yeah, maybe the actuators failed.
Electrical actuators operate mechanical vanes that redirect ice and snow out of the back, preventing ice from blocking airflow to the engine. When the vanes are in operation, they reduce air intake by 50%. Was the anti-icing system working? Investigators test another actuator to see if it matches the humming sound heard on the CVR before both engines flamed out.
Well, that sounds familiar.
Tests on the actuator produced a tone which was similar to that detectable on the cockpit voice recorder of the aircraft.
Shall we compare it to the CVR?
Mm-hmm.
Investigators listened to the humming sound on the CVR to confirm it's the anti-icing actuator operating.
It's the same.
The matching sounds indicate the anti-icing actuators on Flight 670A were fully operational.
As there was no other similar equipment in the aircraft that operated at that frequency, the sounds must have been the result of operation of the anti-ice system.
Why would activating the anti-icing system trigger a dual engine failure?
It's never happened in the past. Besides, aircraft use anti-icing systems all the time.
Aircraft anti-icing systems remove ice from control surfaces, from the wing, or from the engine air intakes. And that just allows for the normal operation of the aircraft in pretty poor conditions.
If they were using the anti-icing systems, maybe the weather played a part in the failure of the 2 engines.
Investigators review the weather chart for answers.
February 27th, the crew lifted off at 5:28 p.m. No precipitation, clouds at 4,500 feet, winds 16 knots, ground temperature is 2 degrees.
Doesn't sound like icing conditions at takeoff.
No, and the plane wasn't airborne long enough to accumulate ice during the flight.
Hang on. What about the storm overnight? And maybe that had something to do with the engine failure.
It was quite a storm. Lots of snow. A cold wind.
The weather was appalling. It was gusting about 35, 45 miles an hour. It was snowing most of the time.
Where was the plane during the storm?
The plane landed in Edinburgh just after midnight on February 27th.
The crash happens later that day.
Oh, that's right around the time the storm began.
And it took off at 5:28 p.m.
17 hours. Is it possible the aircraft was parked outside in the snow the entire time?
Let's talk to the pilot who landed the plane in Edinburgh.
Was there anything specifically that the previous crew did, saw, noticed or understood which may help them to actually understand what was the causal elements of this accident?
How can I help?
What happened when you arrived in Edinburgh?
The AAIB turns to the captain of the inbound flight for answers.
The weather wasn't great when we landed. It was snowing and we could see the weather was going to get worse. We taxied in and parked the plane at stand 31 with the other aircraft.
Did anything seem abnormal with the aircraft?
Nothing unusual at all.
Once you parked the plane, what next?
We supervised the refueling. The plane was scheduled for de-icing. But as you can imagine, there was a backlog.
The plane was scheduled to be de-iced before the next departure.
Attention all crews and passengers.
But then the airport was closed.
From midnight, the snow started to become worse. It was interrupting the snow clearing and de-icing operations, and by 2 o'clock, the airport authority elected to shut the airport down, which was the correct and sage decision at that time.
How long did you stick around the airport after it was closed?
A few hours. Then at 6 a.m. we learned the airport wouldn't be reopening for a while, so we secured the plane and clocked out.
Secured it how exactly?
It was shortly before dawn. By then it was really blowing hard. It was icy and there was snow everywhere.
The captain explains how the propellers were secured.
There are sock-type straps attached to 2 of the propellers. They are then attached to the side of the fuselage, which stops the propellers rotating in the wind.
After securing the plane, we went off duty, and that was it.
What about the engine intakes? Did you cover them with bungs?
The aircraft bungs are a blank which covers off the engine intake. It protects the engine from the ingress of dust, dirt, particles, insects, snow, and as such it protects the engine while the aircraft is parked.
Oh, normally we would, but there were no bungs.
Bungs were available at the main bases of Loganair, but not at Edinburgh. So the flight crew had no means of protecting the air intakes.
Right. I think that's everything.
Let me know if you have any other questions.
Thanks. Will do.
The aircraft should be fitted with bungs if the machine was going to be left unattended for a lengthy period. But Edinburgh was regarded as a mere transit stop. Therefore, no bungs were kept there, and the aircraft didn't carry any bungs.
We know the plane parked here at stand 31 shortly after midnight when it was already snowing. The airport closes 2 hours later due to bad weather.
Investigators construct a timeline of the aircraft during the snowstorm.
According to the captain, at 6 a.m. the crew secures the plane because the storm is still raging. Secured partially without bungs, leaving the engines exposed.
And then the crew leaves?
Mm-hmm.
The plane takes off 11.5 hours after the first crew secured it. What time did the storm end?
The snow stopped at 9:52 a.m. The cold 30-knot gusts continued for a few hours, and the temperature hovered just slightly above freezing by early afternoon.
That's 10 hours of exposure to snow, ice and wind.
Would that be enough time for a significant amount of snow to enter the engine?
What did you do?
Nothing.
And somehow cause both engines to fail? Could exposure to a snowstorm for 10 hours have contributed to the dual-engine flameout on Flight 670A?
Temperature? Wind?
Investigators consider the impact of the wind conditions.
Hovering around 0, with winds from the northeast gusting up to 43 knots.
43 knots. That's a strong wind.
Which way was the plane parked?
The plane was parked straight into the wind.
The team discovers the wind was blowing snow and ice directly into the plane's engines for 10 hours.
The aircraft had been parked in extremely nasty weather conditions with driving snow and ice pellets. And the wind was consistently down the centre line of the aircraft, which exposed the intakes to have snow and ice pellets being blown into them.
10 hours. That's a lot of snow.
True. But once the engines are turned on, it should melt. So what's different here?
Maybe it had something to do with the amount of snow accumulated?
Could enough snow have accumulated in the engines to clog the air intakes and cause the crash of Flight 670A?
Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Logan 670 Alpha. We've had a double engine failure. Repeat, double engine failure.
One of the things which makes this accident a particular challenge for the investigators is that they're dealing with ice and slush and snow within the engine intake. That disappeared into the sea during the crash.
Brace, brace, brace.
Without knowing how much snow collected in the engines, investigators keep the possibility of an unrelated engine malfunction on the table.
Pratt & Whitney's detailed examination of the engines came in.
Did they find anything?
There are no faults or defects with the engines.
As a result of the examination, we were satisfied there was no evidence of any form of mechanical failure within the engines.
What about a compressor surge?
Well, that's an idea. Could happen if the airflow is restricted enough.
When airflow to the combustion chambers that power the engine's turbines is severely interrupted or restricted, it can cause a compressor surge and can completely shut down the engines.
How restricted would the airflow have to be for the engine's compressor to surge?
I'll check.
Aircraft engines require pretty much undisturbed airflow to work efficiently and effectively.
Could both engines have been starved of enough oxygen to result in a dual-engine flameout?
Here we go. For a compressor to stall and flame out, the airflow into the engine must fall below 22%.
So that means snow and ice would have to block 78%.
That's a significant percentage.
A 78% reduction in airflow would explain why the engines failed on Flight 670A.
Could that much snow have accumulated within the engine's intakes to block 78% of the airflow?
Let's find out.
The preliminary assumption that was made was that snow had built up within the intake system. We needed some sort of assurance that this was a possibility.
I'll handle the snow, you work the fan?
AAIB investigators test how snow might accumulate and restrict the engine's air intake.
So we produced this mock-up of the engine intake system.
Ready?
And we utilised an extractor fan to create the airflow through the engine.
I'll check to see where it all went. You're not going to believe this.
With the plane facing straight into the storm, snow not only entered the engine's air intakes, but made a 90-degree turn into the upper chamber.
These imitation snowflakes all consistently rose up to the top chamber. And we satisfied ourselves that the airstream carrying the snow would have been capable of depositing all in the upper chamber.
The chamber is full of tubes and pipes. The snow would likely stick to all that cold metal.
There are ducts, pipes, cables, wiring, and all of these provide ample opportunity for snow to adhere to gather. And given that the aircraft was exposed to these conditions for over 10 hours, that was how we believe that the snow actually gathered undetected within that area.
But how would snow up here restrict 78% of airflow down here?
Good point. Something else had to happen for intakes to be blocked 78%.
Serious aircraft accidents rarely have one single causal factor. There's usually a primary causal factor, but in the end, it's a combination of circumstances.
What happened between the end of the storm and the plane's departure?
Here's something.
Did something else happen to the snow-filled engines after the storm?
The crew called an engineer before departing.
One question for investigators was, why did the crew call for the assistance of maintenance engineers to investigate a problem?
I'll talk to maintenance. You helped the crew with a concern before takeoff.
Investigators questioned the engineer about the maintenance call to Loganair 670A the day of the accident.
They called. I went over to have a look.
The AAIB learns the captain was having trouble starting the right engine.
Let's try that again.
The right engine generator would not come online.
Starting sequence finished. Stabilizing at 73%. Oh, not again.
What this essentially meant was that the aircraft had half of its electrical power only, and so the crew quite correctly shut down the engine and then called for maintenance assistance to determine what the problem actually was.
So, what did you do?
I transposed connections on the generator unit and it restarted. All done.
Terrific, thank you.
Try running the engines for 30 minutes.
The crew carried on running the engines after it was apparently fixed.
I left, and that was the last I heard from them.
The fact that the aircraft had been sitting around in inclement conditions overnight.
Prop levers maximum.
Fuel levers, flight.
They maybe were seeking the confidence that the generator was going to stay online.
At 3:12 p.m., The pilots report the engine issue to the engineer. He came at around 4 p.m. and got the right generator online. Then, at 4:30 p.m., the crew runs the engines for 30 minutes.
30 minutes.
Investigators consider the impact of starting engines filled with snow and ice.
The heat from starting those engines would most likely have melted all the ice and snow in the upper chamber.
And then gravity takes over. And it all slides down, landing here, right in the path of the air intake.
Which means all that water and slush would have frozen into ice.
After the engines were turned on, snow and ice inside the upper chamber likely melted and slid down to the air intake. When the engines then idled for 30 minutes, cold air entered the intakes, refreezing the water and slush into ice.
But is it enough?
Was there enough ice inside the air intake to obstruct the airflow by 78%?
What else happened before the engines failed?
The last thing they do before the engine failure is turn on the anti-icing system.
Altitude?
2,200 feet.
Let's put the anti-icing on.
Anti-ice both on.
And when the anti-icing is turned on to clear the air intakes, these vanes would deploy, obstructing the airflow.
When the anti-icing vane operates, airflow is reduced by 50%.
If accumulated ice reduced the airflow by another 28%, it would explain why the engines failed.
The total blockage of the airflow is sufficient to cause the compressor to surge in the engine flaming out and a complete loss of power.
We had two very well qualified crew on the day, and it was an alignment of circumstances that they could not see or foresee.
Captain Mason and First Officer Dixon arrived at Edinburgh Airport long after the snowstorm had ended.
Anti-collision beacon.
Anti-collision beacon on.
They had no idea that their engines were filled with snow.
The snow had melted from the fuselage.
Start master armed.
Engine start sequence.
They took all the right steps at takeoff. They did nothing wrong.
But what about after the engines failed?
Could the pilots have found a way to save their plane?
Airspeed.
115 knots.
We can't relight the engines. Prepare to ditch.
This is the final minute of the flight.
Investigators return to the flight data to determine if the crew followed proper procedures after losing engine power.
Once the engines failed, the pilots needed to relight the engines to make it to land.
Right. Run a dual engine failure checklist.
We have a double engine failure.
Torques at 0 on both engines. Dual engine failure.
But the only checklist available was for a single engine failure.
Dropping fast from 1,600 feet, Captain Mason probably knew that he didn't have time to relight the engines.
Airspeed.
115 knots.
We can't relight the engines.
1,300 feet. 110 knots.
They had no choice but to ditch.
Altitude.
1200.
Prepare to ditch.
Did the pilots do everything they could to ensure a successful ditching?
Ditching. There's no ditching procedure for dual engine failure.
Ditching with power then. We don't have flaps, so aiming for lowest possible speed.
Without any engine power, the hydraulic systems would not be operating. The hydraulics drive the flaps, which means he had to touch down at a higher speed than he would like to do so.
As I get closer, I'll increase the pitch to 9 degrees. Anything I'm missing?
No, sir.
Without flaps, the only way you can reduce speed is to increase the angle, pitch of the aircraft prior to touchdown. His actions were correct.
Captain tried to reduce the impact with the few resources he had at hand.
You hope it kisses the surface of the sea rather than thumping into it.
Airspeed is 110 knots.
Okay, it's as close to shore as possible.
The slower you can go, the safer the ditching is likely to be.
A successful ditching also requires level wings on impact. They nearly pulled that off.
Airspeed.
Airspeed is 88.
When the aircraft touched the water surface, one wing was 3 degrees lower than the other. That's a very, very small amount.
From the time he identified the problem to the moment the plane hit the water, the captain nailed every single action correctly.
They were very professional, and they showed excellent prioritization. The captain especially, his experience clearly showed.
Brace, brace, brace!
I have immense admiration for this crew because they found problem after problem which they couldn't have foreseen. They handled the situation absolutely as well as any crew could possibly have handled it.
This investigation reveals that checklists for double-engine failure and ditching without power were missing from the Loganair operation manual.
The result of this accident was the tragic loss of 2 crew who had been doing their best to follow procedures.
The airline also didn't adequately reflect the manufacturer's advice for protecting the engine's intakes during severe weather conditions.
If the airline had followed the recommendations of the manufacturer and carried on board air intake bungs for the crew to use when the weather conditions demanded, then this accident would never have happened.
The AAIB recommends that flight crews are educated about the potential of ice and snow buildup inside engines.
I think the most important recommendation was that crews must be alerted to the fact that there's a possibility that snow would have built up in parts which are not visible to them by simply looking through the air intakes of the aircraft.
This was a very regrettable accident. Their fate had been sealed by an alignment of circumstances that, whilst difficult to recognise, were avoidable.